Well, here we are drowning in information. And how many people are doing better now with all of this information than, say, 150 years ago? It's really hard as a technologist for many years of my life. It's really hard to comprehend. And that's one of the big turning points in my life that's led me to this place, a sacred place, is why is all of this knowledge not giving us all of the things that we're missing?
Welcome back to another episode of Podcast for the People. Hey, if you're watching, doesn't the set look amazing? Something looks a little different here, huh, Dad?
Fresh and new. We're keeping the people on their toes.
On the edge. So if you're listening through Spotify or Apple, go check out the YouTube so you can see the people that you're listening to. Well, hey, if it is your first time, it's my privilege, it's my honor to intro this episode. And if you don't know us, my name is Talon. I'm here with my co-host, Dad. How are you?
I'm great.
What's your name for all the people that have no idea who you are?
My name is Matthew Pollock, and I have the privilege of being Talon's dad. And we're a father and son who
Duo.
love God, love each other, love the church, and from that has formed this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's like a highlight to our week to sit down.
Oh, yeah. Tuesdays are our magic days.
Our podcast days.
Well, hey, we have a special guest, a special dynamic today. Do you want to kind of intro that?
Very excited. On my right is to have my friend, and I consider him a friend. I reminisce back to 2022. It was a January morning, and we as a family were out for breakfast, having breakfast at a little spot, just having brunch. One of my favorite things to do is have a nice brunch breakfast meal with the family. A gentleman walks by, and I really liked his jacket, and I just did what I sometimes do, and I said, "Hey, that's a really cool jacket." That friend sat down, and we had just a wonderful conversation. My wife, Abby, and I, his wife, Laura, and family invited them to church, and 6 months later, I'm up on a Sunday, and I look about the second row, and wouldn't you know it, Brian, Laura, and his two children are in our church, and from that moment till now, we've developed a great, great relationship, and to our shock and awe, Brian is an incredible, brilliant man who has, since the 1980s, studied AI, and he is a scientist. He is, in all areas, aspects, powerful. So help me welcome to our podcast today, Brian Roemmele. Brian, thank you so much for joining us and for being here today.
Thank you, Pastor. It's really an extreme high honor and privilege to be here. And the recount of the story it's almost mythical in my mind that we made that contact. It was January 1st, and it was a new year, and it was just an amazing moment because we had the prospects of what does this next year look like? We were coming out of COVID. We were coming out of all of the confusion and chaos of that time. And we also were coming back from trips. We had experienced the country and went to almost all the national parks with our family during that time. So we bonded, and we were just at a crossroads, really. We're wondering, where do we go? Do we stay in California? Do we visit the other places we loved? And that's kind of how we started our conversation, seeing that you had a Wyoming connection. We were kind of interested in, is the cold that cold?
I think we got to be honest. Everybody at that time was considering, should we stay in California? Where should we go? There must be a new place. And if I remember, you guys were really considering Tennessee. You guys talking about how you were taking road trips all around. But yeah. I thought, honestly, this family's leaving California. We have to be here because the ministry's here. Yeah. We assume, but you guys could go down. I almost felt like not jealous, but like, you got freedom. I don't. Maybe go check things out in that way. But it's just amazing how God has rerouted your life. And Brian, many people, maybe not in our world, but know you in your world. And I asked you one time, Brian, who are you? And you said, I'm curious. Yeah. You have a tenacity to learn and gain knowledge beyond what meets the eye, to explore. There's that scientist to you, that explorer to you, which is so profound. But just being honest, with all of your expertise and the things we'll talk about today, spiritually, you were at a crossroads too. Spiritually, you were at somewhat of a dark place. You walk into our church, let's just say June 2022 here at the Way Family Church in California, and your life, let's be honest, has drastically what we would call in biblical terms, you've had transformation. You've found Jesus. You become born again. Your life has changed. Would you just kind of speak to that just for a moment to our audience?
Absolutely. It's such a convergence of so many things at that moment. There is the anticipation of change because the recent past with all of the things that this felt so oppressive on us was breaking everything. Everybody around us, our family was being challenged. And I just felt this burden. And meeting you and Abby, it was just sort of like a spark. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna log in on Instagram, and then kind of from there started watching some of the YouTubes, and your message, this ministry and this place was a profound thing for me, and it sort of radiated through my household without me even knowing, just that connection. And what sparked us to come here was my youngest turned to me one day. I was just kind of arranging stuff in his room, and it was like a conversation we had like 2 minutes ago. It was almost like I didn't even know where the conversation came from. He turned to me, so when are we going to that church? Now, we had come back from a road trip just before that, and it was not even kind of talked about. He remembered that moment. It was profound to him. Dylan, our older son, remembered that moment, and certainly my wife. And that was it. Yeah, we're going. That was a Friday, I think, or Saturday, Friday or Saturday. We were here Sunday.
I don't know that they've missed church since. I mean,
No.
these guys are, it's just A to Z foundations class. It's our honor to pastor you and your family is what it's all about, to see this just beautiful transformation. I can remember in the car, I got in the car after that breakfast, and we talked for like 30 minutes, and I texted the family, I said, you guys, I don't know what happened, but we just met somebody significant. This was a divine moment. Today, Talent, we're gonna go into something that I believe as a pastor and as a minister, we need to explore. Not with the answers, not with all the know-how, but as a church and as a ministry, as a body of Christ, we need to get wisdom, understanding, and the warnings of where we're going. And we could almost say, in a way, Brian on the planet is one of the most diverse, educated men regarding AI, artificial intelligence. I mean, when I say that to you, Talent, AI, what do you know about it? What have you explored about it? What is it? What does AI say to you?
Yeah, it's very new. I feel like I wasn't really conscious enough to experience when computers were introduced to the world. You guys probably were. How that shift of like, oh, a computer is a thing now. You can, or even cell phones for that matter. So this is kind of for my generation. I am in the shoes that you guys once were, watching something that is completely groundbreaking, slowly being introduced to everyday life. And I think that is important, like what you talked about. It's important to pursue, like, what is this? What, I don't necessarily have an opinion on it yet. I don't have an understanding on it yet. And I think that sometimes Christians can take the route of, not to say this bad against Christians, but I think that a lot of people think that Christians are stupid because we don't necessarily ignorant. We don't necessarily want to know all the facts. We just like
kind of go bury your head in the sand and just act like it's not happening.
But I think that it's like we're still human beings. We're still on the same planet that people that don't believe in God are on. So I think that it's important for us to explore and to navigate anything that's happening.
That's
so
right.
I'm just, like what Brian said, I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So Brian, to us, in a sense of maybe being somewhat novices, new, and green that want to get educated, and I agree with that, to get educated in this. I want to give a little biblical context, and then I want to just kind of unreel you and let you go in and walk us through some of the realities, things happening behind the curtain, so to speak, in the world today that are taking place. This is a very interesting thing that I want to just preface to us as believers and to us as Christians and understand. Daniel chapter 12, very profound, very prophetic. I think it has a lot to do with the hour, but it does say in verse 4 that, "But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So what's interesting is we could put two parallels to that. Run to and fro. I would assume that would to be travel, flying. That is an end time reality. I think in the 1960s is when that took place, and that's transformed the world. But it gives us an earmark. The Spirit of God, the Word of God that is unbelievable, that is so profound, that is a living book that predicts and reveals the future. It says that in the end of it all, knowledge will increase. It's like knowledge will expedite. The speed of knowledge will surpass. So when we get into AI, I think AI is alluding to this reality biblically, that we are living in an hour where knowledge is superseding. So there is something called the knowledge doubling curve, that in 1982, Buckminster Fuller created a knowledge doubling curve. He noticed that until 1900, human knowledge doubled approximately every century. By the end of World War II, knowledge was doubling every 25 years. Today, on average, human knowledge is doubling every 13 months. But according to IBM and those around the internet, and since things have been released, smartphones, Google, now add AI, this is the jaw-dropping moment that we have to know as believers, the prophetic hour we're living in. Knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. Brian, talk to us, my friend.
Wow, that is an incredible passage. So I equate this to us drowning in a world of data and information. The average human being is so overwhelmed with information distractions, and it's knocking us off our focus and our base, more so than any time in history. So the average person in the 1600s was exposed to about as much information as the average person was in the late 1960s in 1 week.
Wow.
So you
Not
had
much of a margin there.
Not much of a margin. And that was the late 1960s. And so what happens is, as we become overwhelmed, as we become drowning in information and data and distractions and abstractions, we look for pattern matching. Because the human brain, it does not know how to comprehend after it's in overload. We go into what I call limbic system response, low order brain response. And so we're looking for patterns that are very low order. They're very like friend, foe, freeze, fight, or flee. And that type of reaction creates, I think, a lot of the hostility we see within social media and generally around us, because people just don't have the bandwidth to be able to absorb just another bit of information, and then to try to discern what an information means. Well, what is discernment? Well, if you don't have a foundation for establishing discernment, where do you go? You're a cork on the sea, floating, ebb and flow. You don't know where to go. So what's your rudder? What's the foundation? What's your rudder? Well, we have book. We have two books, but basically one big book. And that's a rudder. That's a foundation. And what I've noticed in technology, and being in it so long, as you go along far enough in the technology world, you start realizing that you're going to make, excuse me, you're going to realize that you're going to make a discovery, that you need to have some way of discerning things on a higher order. And that's where I believe why I've seen so many people find religion when they get deep enough in technology.
Wow. That's a powerful truth and a powerful reality. Brian, you, in our interactions, and admittedly so, being green, being a novice, wanting to be aware of some of these things, I'm not a tech guy, I'm not tech savvy in any way. But realizing it from a biblical standpoint, you told me, I said, Brian, when did you begin to explore, flirt, dance with AI? And you shockingly told me since 1980. Most of the people have just heard AI within the last, since COVID possibly.
Yeah.
But this dimension, reality, this knowledge has been incrementally at work since 1980. How did you at 1980, tell me what happened, what explored, what did you?
Let's see. I remember my earliest incarnations of this was working on a Commodore 64, which was, well, I've had a Sinclair before that, but my first real home computer. And one of the first things I started recognizing is that I can start storing knowledge and wisdom. And that's been sort of a theme of my life, because I believe that even at that early stage, I believe that we're leaking wisdom from society rapidly. And not just wisdom from books, but wisdom from first-person experiences, testimonies, testaments. I just felt it was very vital. And I think what I remember where this sort of occurred to me, I used to go down to the beach as a young guy. Early in the morning, you would see seniors walking along on the boardwalks. And, I would just sit down and talk to them. And they would be up early, and they'd be like, yeah, okay, young man, I'll talk to you. And I would ask these questions like, what would you do if you could do things differently? What were the high points? What were the low points? And you would have these magical conversations. And I remember coming back from that one day, and I said, I'm going to program some of this into AI. And at that point, AI was more of a lab experiment at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And living on the East Coast, a group of us nerds actually drove up there to a number of seminars to try to glean something from it, to try to understand what is this. And of course, there's a sci-fi dystopian aspect of AI that we all knew as kids, but I was trying to look for it as a force multiplier of humanity to
enhance
you, to become more aware. And as I said earlier, is I was predicting that we would be overwrought with information and data. And when we were younger, we used to think, man, if I just had access to all the information in the world, I would be X. I'd be able to do anything. Well, here we are drowning in information. And how many people are doing better now with all of this information than, say, 150 years ago? It's really hard as a technologist for many years of my life. It's really hard to comprehend. And that's one of the big turning points in my life that's led me to this place, a sacred place, is why is all of this knowledge not giving us all of the things that we're missing? And that's another journey.
Wow.
I started saying to myself, what's missing in humanity? What is that puzzle piece? Because I was so blessed to meet so many famous and wealthy or successful people. And I started asking myself, I don't know if I want that life. I don't know if I want to live in that place. And it was one of my first breakdowns was trying to, you fight for success, you fight for, rising up. And then you start looking around at what those levels look like. And then you say, I hope you say, I don't know if this is really where I want to be. And I think what I thought, and this is, I don't know if biblically this is correct at this point, but one of my first experiences was in the mid-90s where I got to meet somebody very, very wealthy and very famous, got to go to their house. And I saw this isolation this person had from the real world. It ripped my heart out. I was emotional about it, actually. I saw them as external-wise. They looked like they were successful.
Not at all.
But internally, they were so lonely and lost. And they would ask me, like, what is it like just to kind of go out? What is it like to live this sort of, because they were fairly famous. And I remember turning to my wife and I go, that's probably what purgatory feels like, that you can buy anything, you can own anything, you can eat dinner anywhere, live anywhere, drive many cars, maybe do whatever you want anywhere in the world, and it still does not fulfill you. And to me, that was a convergence of, technology. They were semi-involved in technology at that moment, but also philosophically, psychology, and religious-wise. Those were one of those turning points.
Wow.
I almost feel like this got me involved in helping young artists on the Vans Warped Tour. And it's funny how that kind of happened. I didn't plan on it.
I just want to insert this. The Warped Tour as a young teenager was one of the highlights of my time.
Yeah, the Vans Warped Tour, man. You know,
When it came to Del Mar, I was all about it.
yeah, right. And it was a punk tour, and you know, I've been a
Did you
musician
ever
my
have a punk
entire life.
rock belt?
Yeah, I did.
So
You
did
know,
I.
yeah, of course, Vans, Dickies down to my shins, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Sideways Travis hat. Never got the neck tattoo.
Right.
But,
Where's all your tattoos?
Yeah, they faded.
Travis Barker, right in Riverside.
Yeah.
Here. He's from around. Yeah.
Actually, the funny part is I got to know Don Lithgow, who produced the very early Blink-182 records. They produced two of the bands that I was working with, and quite a few worship bands. He was really high up in producing worship. He's left this planet.
So
at this
when
point.
Brian comes to our church, and to my left, you're right, is Talon, and he leads our worship and writes songs and that whole thing. I think one of the things that kept Brian here was the worship here. He's like,
Yes.
Pastor, I'll listen to those songs and they're all new to me. Then I'll go listen to the record, and I'm like, it sounds better at the way.
Yeah.
than on the ra-"
I got to confess, I've been doing some piracy here.
He's a music guy.
I've been doing some piracy. I've been extracting the music and downloading it on my iPhone. My wife and I and
That's
the kids are
beautiful.
listening to this version of the songs.
And he had
It's
an idea.
magic.
He's like, hey, if you on the radio, why don't you connect some of the worship to the music? I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
A true fun quick story, because this is gonna be it's so serious. But I was at the Soma in San Diego, and back in the day, Travis Barker was a drummer for the Aquabats.
Oh, yeah.
And he's outside skateboarding. I tell my kids, before he was outside skateboarding. He was wearing a funny outfit and all that kind of stuff. So
They used to walk right through the crowd to go on the stage. It was amazing. But what I found out on the Warped Tour, I was managing some young bands, and I was entrusted to try to keep them on a good path. And what I noticed, so many things at that point in my life, it was almost like getting a PhD of where the youth culture was moving. And I got to see pre and post smartphone.
wow.
Because this is 2003, 2002, and then obviously by 2009, everybody had a smartphone, at least to begin with. And it was about 35 dates in 40 days. So there was a lot of bus rides, a lot of movement, and I got to see artists in their reality, you know, and you realize just how much they are just real people, you know, and they come with all the things that all of us come with. And it was a big reality. But during that process, I started realizing that when you're on the egress up, what are you aiming for success? What are you aiming for? What is that thing that you're chasing after? And I used to pose that in a more philosophical sense than anything else. I'm like, what do you really want from this? You know, do you want to just do this for a couple of years and then be a painter, painting houses or painting canvases? I don't know, because sometimes it can go either way, because whatever goes up goes down. And the reality of that. And quite a few people I work with were very humbled by that, and they took a path that I think was, back at that time in that era, was called straight edge, you know, and it was just trying to live the life that you really want to live. It was very Jesus based, and it was tough on the road because there were a lot of distractions for those young guys and gals, and that sort of informed me, because I'm ever the scientist, and I was sort of observing how the youth culture was changing dramatically before my eyes. And it was unlike anything I've studied in history. It was this disconnect from what I would have normally have thought were the normal or the expected milestones of life. People were sort of breaking away from that. And sort of, it started with MySpace, the MySpace pictures.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember MySpace.
I didn't do it, but yeah.
All right, so MySpace pictures were...
Was MySpace the genesis of social media, would you say?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And where a lot of bands were connecting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pre-mp3.com days and all that. And people were trying to create online personas that they could never, ever reach up to in real life. Wow. And I saw this bifurcation in personality. And I remember coming home from the tour, I'd break sometimes, and I came home to my wife. We just had some children on the way, and I as a new dad, I started saying to myself, what is it that I'm observing here?
Wow.
And I'm a technologist again, and I'm saying, what's on my hands? Because I help promote some of this technology. And I started realizing that a lot, primarily young girls, were falling for this illusion of creating an online persona that was not who they were.
Would this be like a fake facade?
Yeah. So I think we all create some public persona. I think it's natural because we have fear of exposure of who we are inside.
Great.
And that's a fear of, I believe the biggest fear humans have is abandonment.
Wow.
Yeah. Abandonment is our biggest fear because the human is born helpless for the first 8 years of their life, right? Other animals, a bird doesn't learn to fly. A bird gets out of the nest.
Forced.
Yeah. And if it doesn't fly, it's probably, at that point, it's never going to fly. So humans don't have that. We're blessed to have this 8-year of mentorship and guidance from our moms and dads to shape us in this world. And frankly, if we suspend those first 8 years in some way, there's a dramatic disconnect.
This is power. Can we pause for a moment? That's
Absolutely.
a profound thought. Is it safe to say that within those 8 years, the predominant behavior patterns of that child are formed?
Absolutely. Yeah. And
we are a sum of our first 8 years.
So much so that it is such a humbling thing when you really realize
How was your first 8
important it is.
years, Talon?
I don't remember.
It's all a blur.
You guys
Hold on, let's take a
answer that
hug.
for me. You guys answer that for me.
You know what's so interesting is
Jeez.
we were designed to be what this place creates, a community. Wow. The church creates a community, and it's supernatural. It's powerful, and you can feel it when you walk through these doors. And we are missing that in our society today. To such a level that I think it's screaming inside of younger folks. And I started to see that on the Warped Tour. It's when I first experienced cutting, and I didn't understand it. I thought it was suicide. I thought it was a cry for help, and they just wanted attention. And then when I really started to understand what it was the inability to express what was going on inside of their heart. Something was missing. And now it's become so common, nobody even cares about it. I mean, I can find people in the population that I know are cutters. I can see it now. I've been around so many. The Warped Tour and punk music, liberation music, which is really... what I think early punk music represented was an abandonment of what you believed the burdens were placed on you that you were not yet ready for. You were trying to liberate yourself from this burden that you didn't quite have the preparation for. In our ancient cultures, we were prepared throughout our life. We had the Bible in the family. We had a leadership in the family.
We were part of the community at church and God.
And everybody was looking out for us. We had a culture and a community. And so as young men and as young women, we had a path. We had a guidance on where to go. Now we're the cork in the ocean. And even if we're doing our best, the distractions and diversions and all of the things that are creeping up make it hard. And let's just be really factual about it. The pursuit of being able to earn an income in today's economy pretty much requires both parties to work and to work diligently. And that was not the case for most 99%.
You're meaning like a wife and husband and wife?
Yes, 99% of human existence, there were defined roles, right? And these roles were so well thought out. Like it was a plan. You almost have to say, there was a plan here. Somebody designed it.
For the healthy development of that family and child to reach the target destination.
Absolutely. And how can you do it when you have disinterested third parties?
So
right.
good.
Right now, they're looking at trying to do this at 4 years old. So if you are so wrapped up in your career that you're giving up your kid at 4 years old to a public school system, for the greater good or for the lesser good, you can make this own determination. But I think you can look input versus output. So if you look at where the education system is today, in not just America, but the world, are we getting smarter? Are we getting more fulfilled? Are we getting more robustly strengthened minds in people? Or are we weakening? So you just have to look at the output. Now we know in a popular lexicon, we can debate this for hours on what's causing it, what are the philosophies, and certainly you can go back to that. But the basis is, how did we get here? Right? So that's what I like to do as an engineer, is I like to look, all right, how did we get here? What caused humanity to thrive and to be successful? We are the evidence of a thriving group of people, or else we wouldn't be here, right? So we're the evidence of that. So what was the wisdom that these individuals possessed that we don't have today? What's causing everybody, I don't want to say everybody, what's causing a great deal of the population to feel so abandoned? So I mentioned the abandonment concept, and it's a tough thing. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm an observer, and I'm curious. And if you look at those first 8 years, a baby can't feed itself. So for that parent to want to be absolutely certain that that child is not left behind, it's got to have some magical connection to the mom, because that mom just went through a tremendous ordeal to have that child. And hopefully the dad has been absolutely transformed by almost a sense of immortality, by passing on a bloodline and being able to shape that child in a direction that averts some of the pain and tragedy that you face in your life. This is the first magic thing. I used to talk to young guys on Warped Tour about this, is that's the first thing you feel, is like, I'm going to make sure that they don't run off the road where I did, because I think everything.
I'm going to give my entire life to the well-being of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is hard-coded from God. That is hard-coded in you. And then as you go on a biblical path, you start seeing that rise up almost like a hologram out of almost all Scripture. It's preparing you for a journey. That book is preparing you for a journey, and it's giving you the armor, and it's giving you the guidance, and it's giving you that as a leader, and hopefully you're imparting that upon your children. And that's kind of where we are today. As I think we've lost that, and our technology has gotten in the middle of it. It's isolated us.
It's created a massive chasm.
Yes.
Of disconnect, lack of community, which has probably amplified abandonment.
Absolutely, because in fact, abandonment is equating to love. Right?
And I would, just to be totally transparent here, and I got family there, just to be like, abandonment is probably, I feel that. I'm a connector. I can feel, not knowing that, or even, Ab and I walking through our life and learning, I can probably feel like abandonment is, when you say that, like, that just rings in me.
Yeah.
And but I could feel like that is such a core value. And you just look at where we want to go. This knowledge, it's just creating more of a chasm and separate, because we have no more bandwidth. We have no more bandwidth as humans. And so we're more disconnected now, and seeing the effects of that are just paralleled. Abandonment, at 20, when he says abandonment town, what do you feel a sense with that?
Yeah, well, I almost see it from my perspective as it's in our nature to want to belong and to want to be surrounded by community. And I guess my question is, why do you think that technology fails to do the very thing that it promotes it's gonna do? I mean, just the new Apple headset comes out, and I've noticed and I've observed that the marketing behind all of this new technology is so that we can feel closer to one another, and that we can, it's just FaceTime. Like, it was this huge thing. You're going to be more connected to each other than ever before. The new VR, it's like you're going to be in the same room, even though you're not in the same room. You're going to feel so connected. And I feel like that's always the message or the selling point behind technology. But if you just look at the track record, I can say that technology has made me feel less connected than rather more connected. So I'm curious as why are they advertising it as something like that, but in reality it's not that? Is that just a flaw within us? Is that a flaw within the technology?
Talon, wow, that's high wisdom there. I would almost equate it to giving you styrofoam for dinner. Right? You're going to bulk up on it. You're going to feel and styrofoam that's really spiced just the right way, tasting like your favorite food.
It's got some marinade to it.
Oh, it's great. But and I once wrote this a couple of decades ago. I saw this coming. I said that the genuine and authentic is going to become much more valuable than the artificial. Wow. And that's where we are. And we are drowning in the synthetic world. And you know it as a musician. You are up there with your real voice singing. And all of the things of humanity come out of there. And you're at the edge. Am I going to hit that note? I'm gonna go for it right now. And you go for that high note and you're not a falsetto and you're like, boom, I did it. You could have auto-tuned that. You could have auto-tuned it, right? And it could have sounded like, like any other auto-tune on Spotify. Yeah. But the authentic and, I'm sorry,
which is we're being authentic right now.
Yeah,
your phone's ringing. He's in demand. It's probably a president in El Salvador wanting his wisdom, but we got him here. Yeah, that's the authentic part. Welcome to Podcast for the People. Yeah, it's where live. Real meets real.
Yeah. So the authentic, it's like seeing a starving person on a desert island. Right? When Pastor Matthew is delivering a message, you can see that it's fulfilling that emptiness that we all have. And I believe, and now in these teachings, we're designed to have that emptiness and we're designed to seek how to fill it. And your challenge as a human being is to find that path. And hopefully, God willing, you're finding that path at the right moment. And you're not ignoring those messages.
Yeah.
The things that are talking to you. So the technology, all right, I'll give you the technical term, the feed bag for the eyes. You know how the horse feed bag?
Yeah.
The AI goggles are feed bag for the eyes. It's heartbreaking what that's going to do to all of us, because if we were already generations removed, imagine the next few generations that are stuck in that world.
Yeah.
The unauthentic, the ungenuine, and they don't even know what authenticity looks like. What we're doing here is what we've always done. We were around the caves and the fires, and we'd look at the night sky and it was clear, and we'd tell stories, and we would prophesize. We would read these things, and we would savor over each word. Each word was magical, and when you start thinking about the profoundness of that compared to where we are in these 30-second dopamine hits on TikTok videos, they're designed to seduce us from our time. The only thing that we have to give that machine is our time. They don't even necessarily want our money. They want our time. So you wake up from that hypnotism, because it really is a form of hypnotism, and you say, where did my 2 hours go? Who took my 2 hours? Why? It was a cat running around in circles at high-speed motion with some weird sound. Somebody jumping out of the car and jumping back in, eating laundry detergent. What's going on here?
So true.
And it's a debasement of humanity, and we certainly know where that's coming from, right? I mean, the more you debase the beauty of human existence, the more you take that beauty away. And we can see it in everything. All of our arts are debased, right? They're debased to the point where you look at modern art and you're saying, okay, I don't get it. Well, you're not supposed to get it because it's literally not art,
Wow.
And so this kind of segues into AI, because if we look at AI from one perspective, and this could be the negative perspective, you can see this as another level of smothering humanity, another level of just programming us and pulling us apart and pulling us away. And frankly, we've been a victim of artificial intelligence unbeknownst to us for the better part of a decade.
Wow.
Right? So it's in there in all different aspects, from the Google searches to your Netflix searches to Amazon recommendations.
The ads that will pop up that
Absolutely.
I started talking about my allergies, and then
Zyrtec or
there
something.
it is,
right?
right on my story. It's like,
Or
how did
Alexa,
they know?
Alexa, play
Yeah. Well, it already
ISOI.
knows. It already knows. It's got it in your mind. So those things are really interesting to discuss, but let's put that aside for a
Can
second.
you do me a favor as you're going?
Yeah.
To the average, Talon and I in the room, to the average individual, is it possible, or is this too ambiguous? Could you define AI to us and to our listeners?
Sure.
AI.
So the original concept of artificial intelligence happened in the 1950s when we had tubes, right? And it was more of a philosophical construct. And a mathematician named Alan Turing came up with the Turing test. And the Turing test was this concept that if I type on a teletype, it wasn't even a computer keyboard, into something and it typed back, what would the questions be that I would need that I would think it was a human being?
Mm.
So that the Turing test was to be able to convincingly give you a response of a human being. And
1950s.
1950s. I started studying that. I would actually go to Princeton University Library and study some of these early AI pioneers. And they were very philosophical. And there was a bifurcation of the concept. There was something called cybernetics, which we now think is more as robotics, but it really wasn't, and artificial intelligence. First off, we don't really fully understand what intelligence is. And we didn't even back then. And we're probably even further today. It's like a balloon that you're trying to grab and it just keeps getting further and further away. What is intelligence? How do we define it? What is creativity? How do we define it? Where does creativity come from? I mean, these are all the roads that I go down all the time. I've not come across any amazing creator, inventor, songwriter that doesn't feel a bit of the imposter syndrome, that I don't know where that came from. Where did that tune come from? Where did that melody? They're in the shower, they're driving. I'm sure you get inspired. You're driving one day, maybe Abby's driving, and you're like, I got to write this down.
Write it down.
Where did it come from? Well, we know where that comes from. That's divine inspiration.
Yeah.
And I've not yet
The
to
Spirit
meet
of
a
God,
person
the
that
Holy Spirit.
you cannot explain it. There's no scientist that can explain it. They will try to tell you it's neurons that are firing randomly. Fine, it's whatever. But the bottom line is we are all divinely inspired. But if the noise level is so loud, we don't get to hear it. I believe we're all designed to be this. So AI was this concept of, well, of course, you had science fiction writers that were trying to say it's going to be a robot that's going to walk around and be kind of sentient and things like that. And quite rapidly towards the later 50s, it became more dystopian science fiction movies. And that's the AI that we've kind of got to know. We have the Matrix movie, and we have Terminator.
Great.
So whenever I ask people...
Those were foreshadowing AI moments.
Yeah. Whenever I ask people, I always, to try to deal with the existential and real threat, I ask people, give me your top 10 fears of AI. And then we throw away the first 5 because they're always movie-based. So we start going down. So what is AI? Well, autocomplete when you're typing on your smartphone is artificial intelligence.
Wow.
In that same definition.
Wow.
When you are spell checking, you're already doing that. If you have an iPhone, the AI inside the iPhone is categorizing and identifying things in the picture. So one day you're going in there and saying family pictures. Here's dad, here's mom. And it's like, I never told him that.
Yeah.
How did they figure it out? So what AI is doing is it's taking a corpus of a tremendous amount of data and finding patterns in the data. Pattern recognition is what we sometimes attribute to intelligence, even creativity. So the AI that we're using today, the inception point was November 2022. This is how new it is. So in November 2022, a company called OpenAI released ChatGPT 3. And this is when...
November 2022.
Yes.
You've been in our church for 5 months.
Yes. So it came out, and the average person started reading about it because the popular media started saying it wrote an entire dialogue, it finished this book, everybody was doing everything they can with it. I equate it to the undiscovered continent that we all landed on, because literally we are all students of this. There really are no AI experts, to be really frank about it, because the AI experts don't even know what it's doing.
It's so new.
They don't even know what it's doing.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're explorers, and I was diving into it in the earlier versions that were not so user friendly. You had to break into the Unix terminal programs, and you had to use APIs, and you had to code. There's a lot of Python coding and stuff to get it to work. And so it was hard to explain it to people on what this was until the chat interface, which looks like a texting interface, arose in November. And then people flipped out. Now that's the textual AI. There's image-based AI, which we have DALL-E and Midjourney. And a lot of folks are experimenting with that. And there are video-based AIs that are coming out right now that can completely synthesize a non-existent person to literally go and speak text in a voice that never existed, with text that never existed.
And in a sense, could we say to me again, like automobiles, electricity, computers, cell phones, this technology is here to stay. There's nothing we can do about it, and it's going to create another transformational moment in human history.
Absolutely.
So we have to get educated with the warnings. And one thing I just want to say, what I love about you, you walk with a limp. You know, you are skilled in it. You are astute in it. You are educated in it, still with its unknown. But you carry a reference with it, because you see there's a sense of warning we need to have with it as well, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
But it's here. We cannot run from this thing.
No, the horse has left the barn. The toothpaste is out of the tooth thing.
This morning, and I shared it with Talon. I shared it with Caleb, Dylan, Talon. This morning, while having coffee, Ab and I, as we do every morning, having coffee, she said, "Hey, babe, I shared something with you on your social media, and it may be beneficial for your conversation with Brian."
Oh, wow.
This just came out. I don't even know if you know it. WEF, so the World Economic Forum, wants AI to rewrite the Bible. And watch this. Help me, son. I got this coffee. Thank you for the coffee. It's so good. I want to put this. Rewrite the Bible in quotations. Look at this. In correct ways. Yeah. Assuming that the Bible we have is not correct, but AI will recorrect it in a woke way, wants to rewrite the Bible, and is commissioned to rewrite the entire Bible. And we have to understand. I mean, that right now, as a pastor, as a leader, the Bible is the Holy Spirit. It's an untouchable thing. Yeah. So this AI could step into every sacred thing and reconstruct from marriage to the Bible to the church. I heard last week from a congregant member, said, "Pastor, we know the days are wild. The first message, Sunday morning message from AI was done in Germany."
Yeah, these are extremely concerning.
Big stuff.
It is very big, and I think one of the biggest pursuits that humanity has been chasing after is always to try to create a new religion, and to try to create a new God, and try to create a false prophet. And I think we can see this biblically.
Powerful.
And science. True scientists don't do this.
Wow.
The true scientists that I know are empiricists. They follow the evidence.
I love that.
And when they see the evidence lead them down a path where if you look at the subatomic breakdown in physics, because I originally was going to be a physicist, and I live near Princeton. I thought I was going to go to Princeton University. I just wanted to nerd out and be in a lab somewhere and
Leave me alone.
yeah, serious. I mean, I was like, I'd play guitar and I'm like, okay, I can do this, and then I'd stutter away. And what I learned about physics was at the Institute of Advanced Study, I met some of colleagues that knew Albert Einstein before he passed away. The Institute of Advanced Studies, Albert Einstein's last place. And unbeknownst to most folks, they kept Einstein's room that he had there. And he was working up to his last days in what was called the grand unification theory. This was to unify quantum physics, which he said was spooky action at a distance. What's spooky action at a distance? It basically violated all of our understandings of how particles worked. I can move something here, and I can measure something here, and I could see it change over there. And over there could be 1,000,000 miles away. And in theory, Einstein's theory of special relativity said it could never happen that way because light, the speed of light, is the speed limit. And it was a big cathartic experience for him to fully try to. He was challenged in his last years because he said, I know that special and general relativity are serious theories, but it's missing something. So as a young, precocious kid, I had a friend that worked at the Institute of Advanced Study. I was a teenager, and he was quite an ancient gentleman. But, as a teenager, everybody looked ancient to me. He was like, oh, you're 30? Man, you're old.
So true.
And yeah, so anyway, I was just hanging out and so privileged to be able to be in that place. And they were tasked with just thinking. These are folks that they were there to think. They were educators, but they were from a different block of wood of creative thinkers, and they really inspired me. Absolutely built a lot of my curiosity and fearlessness of curiosity, meaning I'm going to go in there. I don't care where this leads me, as long as there are bases. That's why I'm here. I've been led here, right? There's step by step, walking through these doors in this sacred place. But when I was there, an older gentleman walked up to me. He goes, you seem to really like Albert Einstein. He goes, come over here. I want to show you something. I'm like, okay. And he basically said, there's this little closet-like area. And I'm like, they're going to take me into a broom closet. It was Albert Einstein's office. They maintained it, but they did, at that moment, they still had it. But they did not want to publicize it because they didn't want to become a tourist attraction. Right? It'd be Disneyland. Let's go walk through Einstein's office. And lo and behold, what did I see on his desk?
A Bible.
Religious texts, the Bible. Right? And Newton. A lot of folks hear one side of Newton's story. Isaac Newton, right? Do you know what mostly Isaac Newton was doing? Was trying to transcribe concepts within the Bible. Some of my colleagues have worked, and now I might have to go to my smartphone here, but they've found patterns within the first 5 books of the Old Testament where there is a repeating. I don't know if you guys really want to hear this, but AI made this discovery on biblical, where are we here? So the Torah, which is the
first 5 books of the Pentateuch,
yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so first 50 letters of the book of Genesis spell out the word Torah at every 50 letters, right? And then when you go to, you skip Leviticus, and in every 49 letters, the word Torah is spelled out, right? Now, how is this possible, right? What's this pattern? This is a pattern. AI finds patterns. This is the power of AI. And then if you go to Leviticus, every 7 letters, the word YHVH, Yahweh, is spelled out.
Powerful.
So you have 50, 49, and then 7 in the middle. So what is it that we're looking at? We're looking at patterns. Now, I challenge people who are scientific, who are looking for facts. You have to explain that coincidence.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, to me, not a coincidence. That's too powerful to show up. So AI is a pattern recognition system. And so let's look at the current AI that came out in November so that we can really understand it. AI does not store words.
Hmm.
LLM is the AI model. It's called large language model. How do we arrive at that term? We found out that if we build a system that looks at the pattern of human language and give it a corpus, basically everything was ever written, including the Bible, and we tell it to find patterns, it can predict, like spelling checkers, what the next word's going to be. So when we're probing AI, or we call it prompting, we're putting word by word in there. And by the way, we don't necessarily know what we're going to say. If we're really in a flow of things, like you are most of the time, right? When you're up there, it's a flow. You don't know what that next word's going to be.
True.
It's coming through you and it's coming out of you. And we can explore what that is. But AI is doing something very similar. But it's doing it mathematically using something called tensor math. So when AI was storing up the corpus of human knowledge, it was just looking at those patterns. And so what's in the AI models is math codes. So it's nothing but numbers and maths and relationships to words. And there's something called weightings. And those weightings, certain words seem to follow other certain words. And in the English language, it's actually pretty easy to determine what the next word can be. And this was all discovered by accident. Up in Canada, a university up there was trying to understand human speech. And it was just that part of it. It was trying to understand like what Alexa and Siri were doing. And it was trying to use these models to understand what the speech was saying by looking at the mathematical relationships. And then they used it as a model to try to interrogate knowledge, to try to go into a knowledge base. And voila, you had the proto-AI that we have today. And so what is going on in there? AI is guessing what the next word's going to be. So when you ask a question, it's going through a decoder. It's forming a mathematical relationship to your words. It's a transformer. That's GPT is a generative pre-trained transformer. So if you have Chat GPT, that's what it really means. You're just talking to a transformer.
Generally, how many people of the public are using it at this stage, would you say, in a general sense?
The fastest growing technology in history. They are claiming over 400 million people signed up in the space of 1 month.
Today, nearly 400 million people.
There's probably much more than that. The data is not even out there.
Have you explored with it? Do you use it? Do you know?
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah. So, basically, whether we dive into it or not, see, I dove into it and I'm trying to help people understand how to become empowered by it, because I don't want to see anybody be victimized by it. And the only way you don't be victimized is you go to the dragon in their lair and you ride the dragon. You don't need to slay it. Ride the dragon. That's the message. I can probably find biblical analogies, but that's what you do.
And forgive me if this is just an ignorant question, and I can own it if it is. Who's the brain? The generator of AI. Who's is it? How did it originate? Who's given it its breath? Where does it come from?
Well, it's a group. It's groups of people.
Did it form in a form somewhere in
it's actually
Switzerland?
It's actually not that romantic. It's this guys in labs threw all these words together and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Well, we really don't know. See, within AI models, there are let's look at them as neurons, like the brain, right? And we don't really even understand how the brain works, right? There are people that have lost half their brain and they've lost no memory. Tragic accidents. If you go down this rabbit hole and you start saying, how is that possible that somebody can lose like 90? If you remember Rain Man, right? Do you remember the movie Rain Man? So Rain Man is a gentleman I got to meet when I was very young. Kim Peek was the gentleman. And what happened to him? He became a savant. He had savantism. And actually, I think Kim Peek was a lot more interested than Dustin Hoffman was in his portrayal, because Kim was multidimensional, incredibly incredibly religious, by the way, very deep into the Bible. He can name any passage backwards, forward. You give him a word, he can come back with 10 passages off the top of his head. He read the Bible every single day of his life, and he was enthralled by it, actually. So what we learned about Kim Peek, he had a form of encephalitis, where essentially water on the brain. It's a Latin term for water on the brain. And his brain was so compressed that they assumed only about 30% of it was working. And the primary damage was to the center portion of the brain that connects left and right hemisphere, called the corpus callosum. And when you disconnect the corpus callosum, you have two machines, the creative machine and the logical machine, running wild independently without something pulling it together. And we know that damage to the corpus callosum creates social anxiety at the very least, and then social retraction. And that's where Kim kind of retracted to. But we don't know where these neurons really exist. We can say, okay, if you take this part of the brain out, certain functionalities physically might happen. Yes, at the lower functionalities, we can do that. But the higher functionalities, you can't remove a single memory from somebody's brain. So the same we found out was true with ChatGPT or the large language models. You have this big dimension of interconnected words. So imagine clouds of words that have lines connected, sometimes millions of them, because they are all interrelated. This word relates to that word, which relates to that word. And when the model is trying to access its data, it's trying to follow a path that connects each word to the next word. So it doesn't have a concept that we know of. We're guessing now, but it doesn't have a concept of the idea like we might. So we have a general idea of what we're speaking about, but we don't know the words that are going to come out of our mouth. We're almost, oh, did I say that? I didn't plan to say that. We all have that going on. And sometimes there's magic. We're like, where did that come from? I couldn't have written that down. Like I trained a lot of people.
You told me the great Gatsby book,
Yeah.
7,000, right? 7,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that great novel, that great book, 7,000 words, AI reproduced it in 7 seconds.
Yeah, we and this is a big experiment. And what we did is we asked AI, or a large language model, to complete a new last chapter of The Great Gatsby. So within 7 seconds, in a context window, all that text, we gave it to the AI and we said, come out with what would be the next chapter, the last chapter. And so what are we seeing there? Are we seeing creativity? What is creativity? I don't have the answer to this, right? I do know creativity when I see it. I don't know if I'm really seeing creativity other than maybe novelty sometimes. Something novel is not necessarily creative. It just means I didn't see it before. And so is some creativity novelty? Maybe. I think we're all derivative to some circumstance. I think we are the essence of what we were around, our environment. So there is a derivative nature to human existence in and of itself. And certainly that's what AI is doing. So when you look at that new last chapter, it followed the threads of all of the characters, and it built a new ending to that novel. And you could do this forever. You can just do it again, do something else. And now, again, when you see this for the first time, it is natural to have this unbalanced feeling. You should feel this way. You should feel, wow, I've seen something really phenomenal. Oh my gosh, what does this mean?
Yeah.
What does this mean to creativity? And I think anybody who's an artist, if they see what goes on in Midjourney, if you're sitting there getting your fingers with paint and you're putting something on a canvas, your heart and soul is being generated within that artwork, or if you're writing a song and you're creating this melody that just has haunted you, and finally it's there, and then you see AI kicking this stuff out. I mean, there's a music AI that will kick out a melody every couple of seconds, and it'll kick out lyrics indefinitely, and you have to take a step back, and I think everybody's going to face this. We're all, as humans, are going to face this. Is my job in jeopardy?
Yeah.
Is somebody going to replace me?
Yeah.
Where are we headed? You sent me a text message a couple Sunday nights ago that through your interview on a very nationally known podcast, that an individual reached out to you and had some connection to where I went to Bible school, and they responded and said, "Is this true, Brian? Could AI replace 80% of the job force in the world today?" I mean, where are we? Is that a potential outcome?
Yes and no. So the empowerment of AI is to understand that if you are going to do exactly what you did before, whatever that was, and you don't use this new tool to stand on shoulders of a new giant, right? The dragon. So the dragon is going to slay you, or do you go to the lair and say, I'm going to ride the dragon, right? You have the choice. So the empowerment is, I'm going to go there, I'm going to understand it, and I'm going to use it to make me 7x, 10x, 100x more stronger. Okay. So does it replace the artist? Well, does it replace the movie maker? And I think just sitting in this set here, we're around a lot of high-tech electronics, right? At one time, somebody had a piece of film that had to be developed, and there were grips and cameramen, and they all got frustrated. It's like, oh, what's this new digital medium? I don't know how to grok it. What is it going to do? I would sit there and slice film together on this little slicing thing, and now I can't do that anymore. My job's over. Yeah, candle maker, Edison. Well, I can't make candles as much because people are buying these glass tubes with things that glow in it, and it's got this new thing called electricity. That's going to happen, and that is why I get out of my shell and talk about it a bit, because awareness is everything. I think your armor in this is to be able to say, this is here, it's coming for everybody as either a foe or a friend, and you have to make your choice on how you're going to utilize this new form of electricity. Because I see AI as a form of electricity that can power a new world that you can create. But don't fall for the concept that it's a new prophet, it's a new religion, it's a new path, because that's the danger that people are making.
And you asked that question just to begin the understanding of what other people think of AI is, like, name your top 5 fears, and the whole movie thing, and it's iRobot and they're going to destroy the world. And when you asked that, when you were explaining that, the first fear that I thought of was exactly what we're talking about now, is that we are going to be replaced. And I think you said it perfectly, that AI is supposed to empower us, not replace us.
I absolutely believe that. I don't think God would have given us this unless it is a choice of empowerment or disempowerment.
So would you say on that, AI is neutral depending upon how we use it?
Like most things. I mean, technology itself isn't evil. It's the human inability to steward it correctly.
Money's neutral.
So we've taken something that is supposed to be a tool, and we've almost like put it on a pedestal to where, because I think that there's, like what you said, it's an exceptional tool to find patterns and things. But do you think it's down to the individual's ability to not make it anything more than a tool?
What a wonderful question. So I think if you are not building your foundation as a human being, which I think is your blessing to do that, you're going to be victimized by technology. And this technology is so powerful that the potential of victimization is greater than we've ever seen in history. If we look at history, where was the biggest empowerment moment in history? I know what it is.
Wow.
And that was the Gutenberg press. And what was the first thing the Gutenberg press created? The Gutenberg Bible. Now, if we look in history, what separated most of us from most of them, whoever they are, was language. It was called Latin. Latin was not the language of the people.
Hmm.
It was the language of the hierarchy. The Gutenberg Bible transformed society primarily, and this is always kind of not in the history books, was because the street language was the language of most of the copies of the Gutenberg Bible.
Hmm.
And villages would amass, the Bible would be so costly. Villages would amass savings to get their village Bible, and it was in their local language.
Hmm.
And they could finally be liberated by this new technology called the printing press. So if we were to take the same sort of mindset that the media is trying to inflame us with, and anybody listening to us, we're all victims of the media that we consume, and we can't avoid it. And part of that is disempowerment, fear AI, run in the corner.
Good.
It's going to take your life away. It's going to do all that. We could have said the same thing about the printing press. Because prior to that, how were sacred texts passed? Right? It was in scrolls, and it was very limited, and only certain people had access to the word. Now the word is in everybody's hands. You can go into, well, you used to be able to go into any motel room to be in a, I don't know about that anymore, but you can go to any bookstore if they still exist, and you can buy a Bible. That is magic, and it's through technology, right? We are granted this gift. I think humans primarily come down to two things. We're tool builders and we're storytellers. And I think all of science is nothing but storytelling. We're telling a story. When we're interacting right here, we're telling a story. And I don't mean that in a parochial kind of way where, it's a story that we're making up, but we're telling a story because we need to communicate knowledge. And we put that knowledge in an envelope that we call a story. And great communicators shape it in such a way that it's able to reach us. And that's what Pastor does on Sundays, is that we're opening whatever the noise level is for just hopefully more than 30 seconds. Maybe it's the full 2 hours or whatever it winds. And we're opening it so that we can hear the message. The Gutenberg Bible and the early printing press opened those doors. So where does that transfer to the Gutenberg moment for AI? Well, I look at it this way, that if you can have a profound soul-touching experience and get some kind of passage of wisdom from the Bible inside a large language model, that you are on a journey of discovery and learning. So if you have, and I'm an advocate of this, what I call local AI. This is AI that you download on your own computer. It's not on the internet. You know what the basic training parameters are. And a number of us are trying to really encode biblical text into that model. So that's the primary format of the questions and answers that you have. Now, what's interesting is you have AI using that structure and that concept and format, but it comes back at you in a more modern parlance. So you can ask it, I'm challenged with this idea, and it will find the biblical text, cite it, and it will try its best to translate it. But it will lead you back into the words so that you're actually looking at the words. So it's not going to take precedence over the actual words.
Yeah.
It's going to lead you to that. So that's part of this empowerment. And so I see that moment, but I'm also challenged myself. I'm a student of this, and I'm also on the same journey of exploration with everybody else. I am probably more fearful about this than most people think that their biggest fears are. And but it's not of the technology. You so eloquently put it. It's how we interpret the use of a tool. The discovery of fire, right? What can you do with fire? Well, you now can become warm and heat your home. But you can also injure another person with it.
Yeah.
Right? So we're given the choice. Forever, God is giving us a choice. Which tool, how are you going to use this tool? Which direction are you going to place this tool?
I believe, as biblical believers, God-fearing men and women following the Lord Jesus Christ, realizing these few moments we have on earth are but just a vapor, can interpret, biblically speaking, that this technology of AI denotes what we interpret in Revelation, a one world system, government, leadership, and the mark of the beast. Would you agree that AI is the got passionate. This is the end of the technology. Is there anything after AI? And would you agree that as we filter Revelation through some of these technological realities, that everyone's functioning on one system? Could AI be the system that does manifest what we know to be an antichrist in the spirit? Would you say that denotes that in a way, Brian?
Wow, Pastor. Very heavy on my shoulders here. That I feel that we are rapidly approaching that moment where people fantasize that they can become immortal inside of technology, that somehow that the grasping of this worldly experience is what they're going to live through for the rest of their existence. That sounds like hell to me. It really does. It's like, why do you want that? What? Because that's all you know? That's because you haven't known anything more. If you don't know anything more, then you grasp at that. And if you become so nihilistic as to think that all of this randomness threw all of these things together, that somehow the clock randomly created itself, then you haven't been looking deeply enough. I think I've had these conversations with many scientists, many technologists, and off camera and off in a corner, they throw their hands up and say, I can't explain it. I can't explain what I'm seeing. So everybody ultimately, if you're on a journey and you're awake, you're ultimately led to that point. So some technologists believe in something called the singularity. The singularity is a marriage of man and machine, that you're going to become some sort of forever lasting cyborg and you're never going to die. As if that is going to be great, that tomorrow is going to be like yesterday and forever. And that's what it's going to be. And you're going to amass this unlimited knowledge, this concept. And again, it's very seductive. And we already have it. We all have unlimited knowledge. It's on these devices we call smartphones. What has it done for us? Has it really enriched us? Has it fortified us? Has it made us healthier or unhealthier? So, yes, if you dive deeply enough into it, AI is the pinnacle of that revelation because it's unlimited, like you were saying before. It's
so we're
absolute
here.
Knowledge.
AI is the technology that says we're here. We've arrived at the climax, the Mount Rushmore of it. Do you see anything beyond this?
I see the merging of this. You have people that want to implant this into their brain. And here's what it's like.
So that's what, that's exciting to us. That's powerful in a way because though for many years, Brian, on this side, we've been like considering the mark of the beast and how does that all work? This gives us this connects dots going, now we see that technology is in place to reveal that Revelation thousands of years ago was speaking to this moment in human history.
Absolutely. It was foretold. And if you're going to be honest with yourself and you read Revelations, you cannot come away with it without looking around you and saying, we've arrived.
We've arrived.
Right. And this concept that this desire to have the Niagara Falls of knowledge in our brain. So the concept of an implant is that all of this knowledge is going to be poured into your brain unprocessed. So this is like eating at the table of an endless buffet, but if you don't ever taste it, it gets just pumped into your stomach. Jeez. So you're not digesting this knowledge. And so to me, part of schizophrenia, if you're diagnosed in this, is that you have knowledge in your brain that you don't know where it came from, voices or knowledge, that's coming into your brain unprocessed. And you're frightened because it's like, where did that come from? Who's talking to me? And we can obviously go down the road what that really is. But this is what some AI scientists, not so much AI scientists, more biologists are kind of going this. They're going in this direction that somehow that's going to afford you more and more power. And as if speed, because AI is very fast, as if speed equals wisdom. And we know that data doesn't mean wisdom. You know, if you look at wisdom, I look at the pinnacle of a pyramid or a mountaintop. And on the very floor of that is data, information, knowledge, insight, wisdom. And we are drowning in data and we're starving for wisdom. Mm. That is our moment in time. And I don't think we've ever been this starved. And it's just like you just give somebody a drop of water in this world right now of wisdom and they are lit up. They want more. And that's the great part about this, is that if we can reach enough people to say, you're not alone. The abandonment you feel is quite real. That emptiness, that hole, yeah, we see it. We all have it. But you're just filling it up with styrofoam.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be enriched by it. Mm-hmm. And I think AI has the prospects of, unfortunately, filling all the voids so tremendously that people are going to be so overwhelmed, overly stimulated in every possible way. Because this is a generation of overstimulation. Mm. Every sense is being overstimulated. Mm. There's no time for people. Mm. Because all we're interacting with is text on a screen. We're thumb clawing at glass screens. That's a de-evolution. We used to use 10 fingers. Now we're using 2 thumbs. And are we more connected? In some ways, okay, I have to be really precise about this. In some ways, you are inserting yourself into somebody's life through this device. I don't know if that fully defines as connection, because I believe connection is this commiseration, this sort of fellowship. Yes. And you cannot have that fellowship through a screen.
The Bible calls it koinonia. It means unbroken, intimate. It's an unbroken continuation, which is the essence of God, our walk with God and all that. Like I can say clearly, as wonderful as technology is, COVID changed the game for churches because people have come to the assumption that I can be a part of that community behind a camera. That's an aspect. But nobody can attest to say it's better to be in the camera viewing it than in the room. There's nothing about being in the room, which this technology sense has almost separated our connectivity in the church. It's a benefit. We throw money to it. We want to reach people. But nobody can say that it's better online than in person.
No. Pastor, you know, the magic that takes place in this room on Sundays is indescribable. And it is so, it's like a shadow representation with all the great work your team does, Dylan and your son and everybody. It's you cannot describe what's missing. But if you fed somebody the artificial and the inauthentic and the non-genuine their entire life, and they don't know what they're missing, it's hard to explain. You can only do it, and Talon speaks to this when he comes up and pastors and speaks to us, is that he sees a generation of people disconnected, and I see it, and I have young children, and they see it amongst their peers. They're sitting back, trying to make sense of it, but we are all in the same pool, so to speak. We're all victimized from our technology. Unfortunately, unless we're going to go in a cabin in the middle of the woods, we have to use this technology, and you are using it in a supernatural
redemptive way.
Yes, because hey, if you turn on YouTube one day and you catch 30 seconds, and at that 30 seconds, because that's the time span, TikTok has crushed us down to 30 seconds, but if that 30 seconds touches somebody, maybe it opens just a door, maybe a window, maybe a crack of light. And that's what I hope for people. So the technology used in a great way, I think can be a very powerful thing. So to any Christian listening, empower yourself into understanding that this is just another tool. The fear of something worldly, you don't have to fear it, right? There's no fear in this. The only thing is cast light on it. Stop thinking it's in the dark. Lighten it up as much as you can. And yes, all of us as human beings are going to have to challenge ourselves to re-educate ourselves constantly. There is no fixed career anymore, unfortunately, right? If you're a lawyer, I can tell you right now, if you're gonna have somebody review a simple contract, you can pump it into GPT-4, and you're gonna. I do something called super prompting, and I say you're a Harvard University law professor, and you have 5 students that have to debate every sentence in this contract, and I want them to defend their debate. This is the prompt. Here's the contract. It can go on for 300 pages, defending and fighting over every paragraph. Nobody has the power to do that. If you're a doctor, now I'm not saying any of these things are replacing these folks. I'm just showing you the power it has. If you're a doctor and you have a series of observations of the patient, now you're trusting the memory of that doctor, which is this big, but you're also trusting his study of books. The human brain can only hold so much knowledge, so much wisdom, and then it goes to books. Now, maybe that doctor may not open a medical text. He might search it on the internet, knowing that this is empirical studies that I can use. Why not empower AI to use that? And to have it not an equal colleague, but a contributing colleague to your work. So you're a doctor and you're saying, I'm challenged with all of these symptoms. Search your medical, let's call this a medical AI, which we're working on right now, the community of the open source. It has 1 trillion parameters. It's massive. It takes all of medical research and it's compressed inside this AI model. And it comes back with, give me the top 10. Give me the bottom 20. And so now what did we do with that doctor? We empowered them with information. Did it replace the doctor? No. Do you want the AI to be your doctor? No. Do you want the AI to be your pastor? No. Do you want AI to be your bus driver or your car driver? Listen, Elon's brilliant and Tesla's great, but we are not yet in the world where self-driving cars are fully reliable. They're going to make a calculation of risk because that's what computers do. We think that we're doing that, but if you ask people that have been pressed in a tremendously pressing, challenging situation, how did you do that? Like, there are videos of moms lifting cars up, pregnant moms lifting cars up because their kid got under a car. And how did that happen? Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? Now, AI is not going to perform that supernatural experience. Humans are. So there are limits, but as a tool, as a powerful tool, it's like the printing press, but it's empowered. So it comes down to this. The simpler the questions you are, that you present to AI, the simpler the results are. The more complex the questions, the more complex the output. And so in the stuff that we're inventing here called super prompting, we're pressing it harder and harder to go down neurons that it generally doesn't do. Because the simple question is a well-worn path, right? So we don't want that because we can go on Wikipedia and you can search it up. What I want to find out in AI is I want to find where the edges are. Where it's a precipice. What is it where it goes beyond and it has to do something called hallucinate? Because AI will hallucinate. It will make up things that it doesn't know. And this is very interesting. We don't really, as AI scientists, we don't know what's going on in these hidden layers. That how is it making things up? Why is it doing that? Well, we kind of know why, because it wants to give you a result. But the results that come out of it is sometimes quite impressive. It's quite interesting. And I've pressed AI with so many questions. And I'm always fascinated. I wouldn't say I would ever run with the output 100% of any AI output I've gotten, but I do use it as a way of considering. In fact, I see AI as part of part of our lifelong journey of learning. I think since we're going into a world where almost everybody's job is potentially impacted by AI, being able to understand how you can use this to empower your current job, but also to empower you to do things that you couldn't have done before. I'll give you a good example. I came across somebody in Central Africa, and they found me on social media, and they just said, hey, I don't have great internet connection, but I want to code this new program, but there's no schools that are able to teach me how to code, in a computer. And, I showed him how to get a computer. There's donations. A lot of people throw perfectly fine computers because they're not the latest and greatest. Unfortunately, not all of them get cut up for their gold and things. They get shipped over. So I got him in touch with somebody that got him a computer. It was about 3 years old, 3-year-old Mac. And we had them download at an internet location a local AI model. And he's now using that to learn how to program, how to code. And the AI is not only teaching him, but actually writing the code. And within the next couple of weeks, he's going to put out his first program. The kid's just turned 16, but he's empowered to want to do these things. So it's a liberation. It's a tool. And it doesn't mean you need to know technology. It means you need to know how to write sentences, because the programming language to AI is what we're doing right here. If you're a good interviewer, then you're going to be a good AI prompter. If you know how to elicit out of somebody ideas that they never thought about before, you're going to get coming out of AI ideas that could be useful to you. And that's the empowerment part of it. What jobs are really quote unquote safe? The jobs that require more and more mechanical human labor, and I am predicting a lot more of a renaissance into that. I mean, there is a part of me that, just wants to have a farm somewhere and chop wood or something, because if you're in this long enough, you literally want to get out of it, because there is a smothering of it, because all of us have reached our limit of overload, and AI is not going to make that easy unless you find ways for AI to filter out the noise and to find the wisdom.
Yeah. I think this has been so informative, so helpful, and I think it's begun a conversation that the church has to consider. And I think it should tip us all off to say we're here in a really profound, powerful way. And in my own small little dialogue, and who am I, I've always just possibly considered that Antichrist could be a hybrid of human and technology, and it seems like this could become the manifestation of what's coming. So let's get schooled, let's get educated, let's see how it empowers us, but also it should alert us the times and hour we live in. Get serious with God, get your family realigned, get back to being healthy. And Brian, we can't thank you enough for you. I think God's raising you up in this hour like a Daniel and like a Joseph to help alert the church in a really profound, powerful way, and with all of your expertise now to connect you in a divine way with God. It's just really powerful. So thank you for your time, and tell you everything you want to say.
It's a lot.
Yeah. It's
a lot.
It's a wonderful reality for us, and we're so thankful for that, and consider you a friend, and what a resource and an asset you have to everything. So I don't know, Dylan, how would you title today? What's our title today, Dylan?
Is AI going to replace us?
Oh, that's great. That's
such
great.
a good episode. I'm
Love
really
you,
thinking
Brian,
about-
so much. Brian Roemmele, what a great gift to us.
So humbled, and such an honor.
So thank you for joining us on
Thank
Podcast
you.
for the People.
Wow.
We're here weekly. Go ahead, Talon, finish this out.
Just watch all that a couple more times, and exactly what Dad said. Let's be informed. Hope to see you guys next time. Can't get it any better. That was insane. I'm blown away. We'll see you guys next time.